Hello, Gospel Light, and happy 30th anniversary. My name is Alan Robinette, and my story's maybe a little bit different. I'm what they call a late bloomer. Maybe some of you can join me in that distinction. I met Preacher in 2009, and this was while I was working for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Many of the church members were my carriers. And a couple of them were my district managers after I got to know Preacher, Thomas Kemp and David Wilkie. But at the time, I just found that being a paper carrier is a really difficult job. What we do very early. And you have to be there every day, and there's no vacations and there's no days off. And I found that with the carrier force, the folks from Gospel Light they were just responsible people, and they would show up every day and do their jobs. So of course I continued to go to that well and hire those folks. One of those people was Monica Brown, and Monica and I were terrible paper carriers. I got to tell you, we kept missing streets. We would drive past intersections because we were talking about the gospel, and we were talking about Jesus, and we were talking about this guy named Eric Capacey. And she said, "You've got to meet him. You are so much like him. You think the way that he thinks. You talk the way that he talks. You have got to meet him." And I probably said something like, "Oh yeah, I'm sure I'd like him. He'd probably be a really nice guy. I'm sure I'll meet him someday. That'd be great." And then she'd come back the next day and reiterate, "You've got to meet him." Well, of course, she was telling Eric at the same time, "You've got to meet this guy. He's your twin. You know, he's very much like you. He thinks like you." So, long and short, I finally agree. Yes, I'd like to meet him. I'd like to talk to him. And Eric and I had the first meeting that we had. And he said, at that point, we talked about football. We talked about pretty much everything except Jesus. He wasn't there to proselytize to me. He was there to be my friend. And so we came back again and again and again. We had 13 meetings where he kindly and gently introduced me to Jesus Christ. And it was a pretty magical transformation. After the 13th meeting, we talked about getting saved and accepting that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. And I was a tough nut to crack. But he convinced me that this wasn't a decision that you came to and then everything was settled, and this wasn't a place that you arrived. This was the beginning of a journey that you will take. And that explanation helped me to take, for what was at the time a pretty tremendous plunge for me. And so I picked up some pizza for my boys. They were 14 and 15 at the time, I think. We went out to my house, which is about 45 minutes outside of Hot Springs, out on Lake Washita. We lost cell service on the way, and Preacher was talking to Carol Ann, and I think the last words that she heard him say that he heard her say was, "Are you going to be okay, honey?" And then he lost signal. And then he was out of signal for about an hour and a half. Poor Carol Ann, I'm so sorry. But we had a wonderful experience. We went out in the woods. We sat down on a log. We talked about Jesus. And it all started from Monica saying, "This is somebody you absolutely have to meet." And that day was June 13th, 2009. 13 years ago. Since then, I've been back to school. I've got a degree. I now work as a librarian. I'm consulting for the Champion Library. I taught a semester this past semester at Champion. I taught computer basics and computer applications. None of these things are things that I could have seen myself doing when I was working for the Democrat-Gazette these many years. I was there for 20 years. And none of these things are things that I could have seen myself doing. And all of it has the hand of Jesus in it, and has the communications that I had with Brother Eric and those 13 meetings. He told me once, it's really difficult to lead somebody to Christ who doesn't have the faith component. And I didn't. I wanted to know something factual. I wanted to know something intellectual. And making the decision to accept Christ isn't an intellectual decision. And I had to learn that before I could be led to Christ. And so thank you to Brother Eric for having the patience with me to be able to take me down that path and start this tremendous journey that now has me more connected to Champion Christian College and to the church than I have been before. Congratulations, Gospel Light, for 30 years. And I know there's going to be so many other tremendous stories that you hear. And to God be the glory.